Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Q&As. It's Thursday morning, so hopefully everybody had enough time to get their questions in. So let's jump in and see what we got. First up, Kirk wants to know why we're not interpreting the two DE10 Nano alternatives negatively as clones like we do so many other actual clones in the retro scene. And I think that's a great question, and my answer is 100% opinion. It's opinion based on almost 20 years of making products, including long before I got into retro gaming officially, but it's still just an opinion, so you're absolutely welcome to disagree, and if you think I missed something, as always, leave your comments, and as long as they're politely worded, I'll definitely take them seriously. And my opinions are based on the information I have today, and they're always changing. But my current strong opinion is TerraSic made the DE10 Nano as a development kit for people to dip their toes in the water for FPGA development and programming. And the whole purpose of this kit was you buy one so that you could learn how to do this stuff. And now it was your gateway drug into Intel chips. So now you're just going to go, and the next time you place an order for an FPGAs for your next project, you're going to use the chip that you're familiar with. So it was never really intended as a standalone product itself. And also, it's based around a chip made by a different company that you could buy and use for whatever you want. So the two alternatives, and I've tried really hard not to refer to them as clones, because I do not feel like these are something that's just stealing somebody else's design, but it is kinda. But these alternatives are just meant to say, hey, TerraSic has more than doubled the price of their board since its release. We think we can make the same type of dev kit or close to it for the purpose of using it with the MiSTer community. So we're just going to make our own. So there's a lot of things at play here. First of all, this isn't TerraSic isn't one dev out of their garage who just made something and now it's cloned a day later. Or worse, like the infamous company that we all know the name of does. It's not something like they showed a picture on social media and this other notorious clone company started selling them before the originals were even made, and now there's low quality garbage out there. This is an established company that made it one of many development kits, and it just so happens that the MiSTer community embraced it, and now we want to make our own versions of it just for MiSTer. And sure, maybe you could use it for other dev stuff, but I think people who are going into this who don't really care about video games and just want to use it as FPGA development are going to stick with the companies that they know, the names they know, and the same pathways to moving forward. So I don't see this as companies viciously stealing TerraSic's business. I see this as other companies stepping up and going, okay, here's a bigger company that has completely jacked the price of their product up. They need to pay their employees and everything. We get that. But for our use, we could strip some stuff out of it, like the QMTech board is missing a lot of the dev-focused stuff that we in the MiSTer community just don't use, or at least the users. Maybe the people writing the cores might need them, but I certainly would never need the stuff that was removed from the QMTech board. So that's kind of my whole stance on it. And I think that's most people in the community's stance. This wasn't a vicious cloning for the purpose of stealing money and, without any regard for existing products. These were attempts to make quality alternatives for the purpose of using this chip. Now, I will say that if they had made their own board that didn't even look at all like the DE10, this wouldn't be a discussion at all, because they're very simply just taking the same FPGA and possibly coprocessor on there and making their own. If that were the case, this wouldn't even be a discussion. It's just not a clone, period, end of story. But this is sort of a clone. It's just the way it was done feels much different than a lot of the horrible stuff that we see out there. And also, both of them are aiming to be higher quality. When I say higher quality, I don't necessarily mean higher quality than the DE10, but higher quality than any clone. Anything that you would hear me refer to as a cheap clone, way more effort was put into not being referred to as that. So I know this was kind of a long opinion answer to it, but my gut doesn't feel like this is a clone product. Even though it technically is, my gut just feels like this is the community going, okay, we're a small community, you've jacked the price up on this thing. Let's try to make our own more affordable ones and let's go from there. Now, QMTech's obviously a bigger company, so you could also say it's just a different company making their version of the dev board that they're 100% allowed to do. But regardless, it doesn't feel like a clone. It doesn't feel like a nasty way to steal money. And also, when a product has been out for a very long time, I mean, it's been at least 5 years, right, for the DE10, when alternatives come out, even if they are clones, it doesn't feel the same. No one's swooping in to steal business. No one's stolen proprietary code from anybody. These are hardware reference designs that were made to make a development board. So please let me know your opinions. If I'm wrong, I'll always listen and always change my opinions or evolve them or whatever. But my gut's just not feeling like this is a clone. Next up, Matt Rickenberg wants to know, why on earth did Taki Udon name his DE10 clone with Pi in the name? Not only is it confusing, but if they search MiSTer Pi, they get articles about FPGA versus Raspberry Pi emulation, or articles about the MT32 Pi. Strange choice. So I need to over-explain this one because I'm constantly attacked about this. So first and foremost, I have been one of the biggest cheerleaders of Taki's board since it was announced. Second, I don't care what it's called. At $160 for a full kit minus case and power supply, but so basically for under $200 by the time you're done with it, you get to jump into a fully loaded MiSTer setup. So as long as it performs the same-ish and as long as it's well made, I don't care what it's called. I am 100% behind this product. I have been promoting it. I've been talking about it. So my thoughts on what I'm about to say are secondary. The thing that everybody, especially the trolls that keep coming at me, need to remember is that I keep promoting this thing. So I keep telling people you should probably buy it. Maybe exercise a little bit of caution at first, as with most new products, but I'm behind it. But I will share my thoughts on it. And I will say that I'm not going to be polite to people who come at me and attack me for this. I've also been called approaching it with a victim mentality I don't care. My opinions on this are based on what Taki has said, which he has contradicted himself for months now. So first he said, what do you think about the name MiSTer Pi? I'll have to delay the project for packaging if we call it something different. And basically the entire community was like, that's the dumbest name ever. Why would you ever do that? Exactly like you think. And we did the vote, and then Taki chose a different name, but then also came back with a lot of conflicting information. First, he said the boards needed to be remade, which is not a thing. You do not take expensive chips, put them on boards, and then throw them all out because the PCBs themselves said MiSTer Pi. That's not a thing. No one ever does that. I don't care if you're making 20 of something or 20,000 of something. But then he said he did change it, and he did show the next versions of the box. And there was a lot of different conflicting information back and forth, and this is all right on his Twitter. So this is not behind the scenes. Oh, well, this was a private Discord, so it doesn't. No, this was publicly announced stuff that he kept just going back on what he said. So all of that is red flags. Anybody who's ever manufactured anything, who's been following this project, sees the stuff that Taki said and went, yeah, that's not a thing. Wait, you just ordered RAM boards from your company, and they completely changed the design without even that's definitely not a thing unless they've already been making MiSTer RAM modules and they just threw those in instead. There's so much conflicting info, and I just don't trust anything that Taki says because everything has been conflicted. The one conversation we had privately didn't go well, and then that got completely and totally reversed afterwards too. So I don't know why he changed the name. I don't know why he keeps changing his story. I don't know if he's lying on purpose or if this is just somebody who has zero manufacturing experience and doesn't know how this stuff works. And I really don't care. I've been getting attacked either way. I'm still going to promote it as long as it is a product that seems to be okay, and it does. A few people have gotten theirs early, and it seems to be fine. Some of the tests that were performed, I definitely would have done them differently, but I mean, you can't fault anybody from testing this stuff if they don't have a long history in doing things like that. So everybody's trying their best. That wasn't a shot at any of the reviewers or anything. But there is definitely a different way to go about testing these boards to see if they hold up. But the short-term performance is not at all what I'm worried about. It's the long-term performance. Generally speaking, DE10s have been pretty solid. We've had problems with the HDMI ports for people who plug them in too hard, and there's been some other issues, but they've been fairly reliable, and I've never had one die. I think the most common is when people use the wrong power supply and blow them out or something like that. So my bigger concern isn't the weird lies or whatever they were. It's not the name change. It's just, is this product still going to be running in 6 months, or is this a low quality clone? Now, my gut tells me, this is just a gut feeling, that they're going to be fine. I'm just saying I would not be doing my job if I didn't ask these questions, and if I ignored all of the contradictions. I would not be. This is what you supporters have me doing. Whether it annoys you sometimes or not, this is my job, is to make sure that all of you spend your money where in the best place possible for the best cost possible. So I'm going to continue to question every single new product out. And I'm always going to approach projects with optimistic caution, as every nerd should. And if people want to single me out and say, oh, well, Bob's biased against whatever people want to say, that's totally fine. I'm still going to keep toeing the line and do what I absolutely always do. Matt, by the way, I'm not talking about you at all. Your question's totally fine. I'm addressing everybody else that's listening and the inevitable comments I'm going to have to deal with. So to answer your question, I got no idea about the name change or any of the other weird contradictions that definitely don't make sense. But as long as the product's good, I don't care. And I mean that with love. I'll still promote it. I'll still probably get one and use it and go from there. Next up, a couple questions from Acnaut54. First, regarding Lumacode, do I know if there are any plans to support a RetroTink device, or are there hardware limitations with the Tink? So I think, I'm just guessing now, I don't want to speak for Mike, but my guess is that it is totally possible on the Tink 4K, and once more are sold and more people have them, Mike would look into adding the code. No guarantees if it'll happen, not sure how hard it's going to be, but Mike would probably at least take a look and see, because it seems like a really awesome thing to have, especially now with both Tinks having pass-through and downscaling, so you could just pass it through and get analog output if you wanted as well. On the RetroTink 5X, there is no technical reason why the hardware couldn't handle it. However, the FPGA is 99 point something percent full at this point. So if it's a very easy and light thing to add, I'm positive Mike would at least consider it. However, if it means that something has to get removed in order to add that, I don't know. It's possible Mike might just do a different firmware for it, try to remove the least used features or something like that. But for the most part, the Tink 5X is done. It's filled. You can't really add anything more to it. And I mean, I wholeheartly stand by that, by the way. This has now had 3 completely different product revisions with the same hardware. So, no negativity there whatsoever. So my short answer to you is it's totally possible. It's just a matter of, will it fit in the code for the Tink 5X? And would Mike have time to really look into it with the others? And if I were Mike, I probably wouldn't look into it now. I would wait till Copper Dragon started selling more of these and it got more into the wild and people really started to give their thoughts and did deeper tests. And if it is as good as I think it is, then yes, but whatever. So it's up to Mike. Those are just my opinions. I'm not speaking for Mike or anything like that. Next, Copper Dragon's online store is done selling digitizers for the year, and they were wondering if anyone else is producing these, or is Copper Dragon the sole supplier. I believe Copper Dragon is the sole supplier, but I would love to talk to them about this and see if we could do some kind of worldwide distribution, if I could introduce them to some of the amazing people in the scene who have had a years, if not decades long, trustworthy approach to this stuff. And I would love to just have a conversation with Copper Dragon. I believe I was supposed to follow up to try to make that happen, but there's been some craziness in my life recently, which is why you haven't seen any podcasts, just because I just don't have the time. But I would love to. There's a long list of people I would love to do a podcast with, but there's a short list of people I really want to get to as quickly as possible, and Copper Dragon's definitely one, and I would love to discuss this as well. Next, on a side note, they received a flippy drive update from Crowd Supply, and the estimated shipping date for them is January 29th, 2025. So essentially just a couple of months from now. That makes sense. That's very fair. That's a reasonable estimate for something like this because it's only a couple months away. I will follow up with the team too. I would love to have a conversation with them as well, to be honest. Those are some of the other people I would love to talk to in the short term. So we'll see. But I think if that's correct, I would call that completely fair. But I'll follow up and see if I can get any more information on that. I also really like it when teams give realistic delivery dates for their products, which is not, I'm not saying that to dig anybody else. I'm saying that to praise the Flippy Drive team, and that saying in order for this is, orders are in for September, October, November, December, 4 months. That is a very reasonable time for a product to be made. And in fact, if they said delivery starts October 1st, I'd be going, it doesn't make sense. That's not how manufacturing process works. So maybe they'll get it earlier, but I do appreciate the realistic time, and I think that's totally fair. And I just hope that they'll make a lot more so that after these start shipping, they're just going to be in stock. But that's a huge financial risk. So if they did only pre-orders, I wouldn't fault them for it because, everybody in the community, and myself sometimes too, wishes people just bought more, knowing that they're almost surely going to sell. But if it was your wallet and you risking everything, putting your house up as collateral type of stuff to make this stuff happen, would you? That's I think I would ease myself into that first, but just my opinions on that as well. In fact, all of my answers to all of these questions are opinions, but hopefully they at least give you something to think about. Next up, BDaves88 has the QMTech board with built-in RAM and an old analog I/O board, and they want to get the user port working, so the snack port. They know that other people have done this, but they're not exactly sure how to do it. So I believe what you need to do is you need to make little jumper wires. I like those little connectors that you could add to the ends of them, and you need to match up the pins, and you essentially have your I/O board sitting alongside of it. Now, if you're a tinkerer that just wants to see if you could do it and have some fun with this, I absolutely would say go for it. You'll have to follow the work that other people have done. You mentioned you were able to get the Arduino pins connected. The only pin you couldn't figure out is the analog VREF pin on the board, and they don't see the equivalent on the QMTech board. So I don't have a QMTech board. I'm not able to answer that question, but maybe people who have done it would be able to help out, even if they just drop a pin number in the comments or something like that, or a reference sheet. I think that would be awesome. I don't know how to do that, but I will absolutely share my opinion. If you're a tinkerer, do whatever you want, but stuff like this is going to work better if you buy the stuff that is designed for it. And there's a few people working on kits for it. There's a few kits already available, I believe. And if it were me, even though I am a nerd who likes messing with stuff like this, I would buy the correct kits for these things and a case to go with it. The case for me is very important because as a tinkerer, I constantly have metal or conductive stuff floating around. And for me to be screwing down a screw into something and have it go shooting out into a running MiSTer kit without a case is, not only is it plausible, it's happened a lot with the MiSTer powered off and sitting there, luckily. So, having conductive materials flying around is something that happens to anybody who tinkers. So I would absolutely want a case on that. And the only way you're going to get a case, a nice snug case, is if you have the boards that are meant for it. QMTech's boards are out of stock and they don't support the 24-bit video output. However, I guarantee other people are working on it. I tried to talk to Ivory from Retro Castle, and he said that QMTech wasn't sending him a board, or there was some kind of roadblock there, which it didn't sound vicious or anything like that. It just sounded like that, QMTech wasn't able to get anything over to him yet. But that's the one I would obviously like to see because that's still my favorite MiSTer case. If nothing else, because of the power button. But also, I love the cases. I love the approach. So, if you want to keep messing with it, if anybody could help point BDavs in the right direction for the analog VREF pin, then please do so. Remember that YouTube deletes links. It's not up to me, so you might have to explain it. Like go to the XX something forum and page 12 or whatever. But yeah, so I would definitely go about it that way. The other thing you mentioned, you would like the QMTech board, but it doesn't have. You don't like the fan that they have, so you'd have to use the fan that mounts to the Cyclone V instead of the nice Noctua one. So I can't tell you what's the correct answer for that without testing, but I can absolutely tell you without a shadow of a doubt that it might be the same, where one might actually be better than the other. And I'm wording it that vaguely because I've definitely done tests before on stuff that I've built over the years that mounting the fan directly on the chip was the same as mounting it in the case. So, or maybe one was better. I don't know. So we'd have to run some tests for that, but I wouldn't let that be what hinders you from moving forward. So if anybody else out there has any suggestions, please let me know, but those are just my opinions on it. Next up, Old Kid said, respectfully, I'm not sure you appreciate the full context of what is being asked of video game publishers and developers from the Stop Killing Games initiative. I probably don't, so thank you for bringing it to my attention, and it looks like you're going to summarize it a little bit for us, and I do appreciate that. No sarcasm, I'm being literal, so thank you for bringing this to my attention. Let's walk through it. Old Kid says they think it's an important issue and believes it deserves some eyes from anyone seriously into preservation. They'll do a bad job summarizing, probably better than me, I guess, but they urge me to continue to spend a bit more time with Ross Scott's videos concerning the campaign. Modern video games are in a weird middle ground between a service and a good. With video games, the laws that would normally protect consumers in other mediums get swept under the rug in convoluted user license agreements. When you make a purchase for a service, you should know how long the service is good for. Currently, developers can end support at any time without any protections or contractual obligation to the consumer. Games can, and sometimes are, literally deleted from the user's libraries without warning. The simple ask is that if it's a subscription, you should know how long the term is for. If it's a good, you are entitled to your purchase as if it's a physical possession. I agree with all those things, but let me continue. Also, while it's unreasonable to ask for devs to continue hosting servers forever for games that rely on online components, it's not unreasonable to grant power users access post-mortem to the software and tools to continue hosting or make modifications to the game to keep it running. So that is gray area, because that would mean that potentially some proprietary software that that company owns would then have to go out to consumers. So I don't think that one would work. But let me just finish up. Old Kid said they might not be doing a great job summarizing a somewhat hard to communicate issue. You're doing a good job, but it is hard to communicate. But hopefully they've convinced me to take a deeper look sometimes. With a few tweaks to industry practices and some reasonable consumer protections, less video games will fall through the cracks of history. So I agree with everything you said about, granting power users access, because that could cross into lines of these are the tools the companies are going to use to make their next games on, so they can't just give that away for people to steal, including even just the hosting or something. And even if it's 10, 20 years old, very often companies that have been around for a long time have whatever they're currently working on rooted in stuff from back then. So it's still the ingredients to the secret sauce, right? Maybe it's a slightly updated recipe, but it's still your recipe. So I get that part of it, but I 100% agree with, if you've bought a game under the context of as long as this console is running, you get to play the game and it gets taken away from you, then that is not cool at all. I think that should be illegal, and I'm kind of baffled as to why it isn't illegal. And I do think that subscriptions aren't great, but I do see why companies think the value is there for them. So as long as you say, hey, you have to spend X amount a month or X amount a year, or as long as you have your, PlayStation subscription or whatever else, I just think I agree with everything you said about communicating to customers what exactly that they're paying for. Because right now, you could buy an Ultra HD Blu-ray and you could buy the license to download that. And if the service that you could download and stream it from is gone, you lose that, but you still have the physical disc. And as long as you have a physical player, you could still play the movie. So not only do I think that needs to be good for video games, I do think that things like upgrade paths for movies and possibly even music could be a way to generate more revenue for companies and artists. And this is something I've talked about a long time ago. I mean, I think 2005, 2006, I had this conversation with some higher ups at a company that we were doing something completely unrelated with. And some of them kind of rolled their eyes at me, and some of them were like, it's a great idea, but the infrastructure isn't even remotely there. But it is there now. So if you want to buy, I don't know, the original Ghostbusters, right? What if you bought it today on Ultra HD Blu-ray, but they have a new version 5-6 years from now, where it's 8K and it's a new way of scanning the film in, I think more people would be interested in saying, okay, I want to watch this version too in the best quality, but I already bought the license for the original, so the next one will be cheaper. You've already bought the 4K version, and sure, you could sell the disc if you want, whatever, but you've already got your money into it. So when you go to the next version, that could be added. And I think that could potentially work for video games if they get this stuff right. So hey, if you buy, remember the Sonic 4 episode 1, 2, and 3? They didn't do that well, but I love the idea of you buy Sonic 4 episode 1 for full price. If you want to buy 2, as long as you've bought 1, it's cheaper. And you could link your games together and et cetera, et cetera. But if you just want to jump into episode 2, it's full price. And same thing with the rest of them. I think there's ways to do this with video games, and I think it would benefit people. And I think it would also motivate people to buy more stuff rather than just not even worry about it. By the way, the stuff that I just skimmed through, the upgrade path, that was like a 2.5-hour conversation. So if you're listening to that going, hey, moron, there's a lot of holes in your plan. Yeah, I'm just trying to respect your time and not rehash a 20-year-old multi-hour conversation. I'm just saying that not only do I agree with you, and especially about knowing what you've paid for, I truly think there's ways for everybody to win. Companies could potentially make more money. Artists could continue to get paid for older work. And we could pay less but buy more. So we're, spending a little bit more overall, but we get more stuff for us that we might want. So excuse my skimming through that conversation. I probably should just delete this and move forward. But if you're listening to these Q&As, you're used to my insane rambling sometimes. I promise that was not just an ADHD word vomit. That actually was a very thought out thing. But, trying to convince the world to switch over to it would be almost impossible anyway. But I'll put the thought out there in case anybody wants to pontificate on it. And lastly, Tony Shadrick wanted to chime in on the name suggestion from last week for the Gentleman's Club. Don't touch the controllers. That's funny. I like that. It was also great to meet you in person, Tony. It was awesome that you came out. It was good to see you. So that's pretty funny. I like that one. Well, not too many questions this week, but I somehow managed to ramble my way through to a full episode. I never intend to do that, by the way. I never approach these with a time limit. The only thing I do approach it with is if I see there's only a few questions, I'll take my time and try to give my full thoughts on something. Whereas if I see there's a ton of questions, I try to just get to the answers and then move on so that these things aren't 5 hours long or anything like that. But as always, if you have any thoughts on these, let me know. I'm always just trying to do whatever you all want because these are just a thank you to the amazing people who supports. So if you have any questions at all, please just ask wherever it is that you support in the latest Q&A post. The way the services work, I can't really figure out what's a new question on an old post. Plus, as you saw here today, I like just scrolling through in real time and answering it as if we were hanging out together somewhere. So thank you very much to all of you, and I will see you next week.